time clock. Usually in the summer there isn't a time clock, but so I'm also really looking forward to just kind of being here today and being present and getting through the rest of the program. Glad we were pretty much on time on Friday, and so we can jump right in where we plan to today, and hopefully do the same for today. So before we get into material for today, wanted to have an opportunity to talk about emotions in 3 acts, if there were questions. So, yeah.
Oh, I was wondering that same thing.
The KO1 one.
KO1, okay. Because that wasn't there for me last week.
Yeah, it just, sorry, this is an hourly pay thing, that you were being paid off a different grant. And so it's switched as of Monday.
Oh,
Today,
okay.
maybe it's today.
So don't use the other one.
Don't use the other one, but I think if you did it,
Mary would.
would work it out, but try and do the other one. So emotions and 3, were there any questions? So it sounded like Lauren wasn't sure. So that was where they left off with the charades. The
She
emotion
was mostly wondering, somebody asked, like, what is the function, the take-home message? And I said it was really that emotions show up in the body, and that they're signals to other people. I didn't know if there was more to add to that you guys would say would be the take-home message.
And really I think the communicative function of emotions, so like that we learn to read others' emotional experiences from their bodies and their faces, and that's one of the important, to kind of underscore some of the conversation that happens earlier in the session about what are emotions and what do they do for us.
I would also add the universality of emotional expression in that you can figure out what somebody else is feeling based on their cues, and they'll be similar to the cues that you would give about that same emotion.
What about the part where they're walking across the room and either looking at other people or not making eye contact? What was the...
So that we don't actually do in our program.
Okay.
We kind of abbreviated it. That was when it was 3 acts, and then we brought it down to 2, so we just do the mindful walking part, and then the emotion charade. So, yeah, the point of the mindful walking before the emotion charade, I think, is maybe just to kind of like set the scene for the walking part.
And also I think the different emotional experience of being around people and not connecting to them versus connecting to them, and how even before we're given the prompt to act out an emotion, that we make inferences and connections with people by making eye contact, and before we do that, it's really great. But as Sasha said, we have, for time and also I think our comfort with those 3 acts, we've gone down to 2 to really, and as it says in the manual as you read, that you can do the emotion charade on its own. And so we've kind of taken the model of doing that on its own with some mindful walking first to kind of set the stage for it. Were there other questions about emotions in 3 acts or emotion charade? All right. So now that we've kind of covered some more businessy things, we're going to do some opening practices to kind of get us all here, save place and save time. And we're actually going to start with the standing practices, and I'll say these are the we'll do the 2 practices that we do as the opener to A. So the theme we'll do next, and so when we get there, I'll refer to these. But this is what we would do after kind of greeting everybody and getting started for A. And so we're going to start with some mindful movement that we call, and lots of people call Trish in the wind. That's what tree in the wind. Trish calls it. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is stand with your feet slightly apart, but hip distance, and you can have your eyes open and in front of you on the ground or closed. And what I'd like you to start by doing is just taking a few deep breaths, standing here, and really feeling your feet rooted to the ground. Feel the connection between all the parts of your feet and the floor. And when you're ready, gently shift from side to side, but still keeping your feet firmly rooted to the ground. Try to keep your balance, so don't shift too far side to side. And experiment with moving with your breath. And now, still trying to maintain balance, try shifting your hips to move in a circle over your feet. And keeping your feet firmly rooted on the ground, but rotating from side to side and front to back. And if you would like, you can raise your hands over your head up in the air and let your arms sway with you. When you're ready, reverse the motion of your circle. So if you were going left to right, try going right to left. So staying rooted in the ground and trying to move with your breath. And on your next exhale, bring your arms back down to your side. And when you're ready, stand still again, rooted in the ground. Alright, so we're going to move to sitting and just a few mindful breaths before we move into our next exercise. So as it looks like you're all already doing, move to get comfortable. And again, if you'd like, you can close your eyes, but you can also keep them open, but with a soft gaze on the floor in front of you. And try and keep your back straight but not stiff. Your facial muscles relaxed. And your hands resting comfortably on your thighs or in your lap. And I invite you to take a deep breath in through your nose and let the breath out through the mouth so that you can hear it like a soft sigh. And we'll do that a few more times. There's no right or wrong way to do this, but try to make the out breath slow and long. Breathing this way can help us feel more relaxed. So a few more times. Breathe in through the nose and release gently as a sigh. Just pay attention to the in-breath and the out-breath with only one thing to do right now. Feeling your breath move, noticing the sensations of breathing until you hear the sound of it out. Alright, so Friday, as we just reviewed, you all left off with the motion in 3 acts. And so we're going to pick up there. And so where we would transition in the E, so again, we're in emotions with the key takeaway point of learning to surf the waves of the emotions. And so far in this section, we've kind of focused on learning more about emotions, what they do for us, how we communicate with them. And so we're going to build on that with our next activity. And so in the emotion charade, so where we left off in acting emotions, really focus on the fact that we can feel our emotional experiences in the body. And often by moving our body in a particular way, we can actually feel a particular emotion. So when we act happy, that can make us feel happier. When we act sad, that can make us feel sad. And sometimes we think of these emotions as positive or negative. Can you think of emotions that you would call positive, or if you've heard people call positive?
Happiness,
Happiness?
joy, excitement.
What about negative emotions that people think of as negative emotions?
Angry.
Anxiety.
Sadness. And so labeling emotions like angry, anxiety, sadness as negative suggests that they're bad and should be avoided. But we can't really avoid them. We're all human, and that's part of what we deal with. We always are dealing with different types of emotions, and some of them, like happiness, we might think of, we'll use the word pleasant. So it might make us feel good to feel them. Some emotions might be unpleasant. And so those are the words that we'll use. Instead of negative and positive, we'll use unpleasant, pleasant, and then also neutral. So we can have emotional experiences that don't make us feel good or bad, just kind of in the middle. And so again, the point is that emotions aren't bad in and of themselves, but it's really important how we handle them. And sometimes these unpleasant emotions come up as stress. They feel stressful to us. And so what do we try and do with unpleasant feelings when we have them? What are some things that people do?
Avoid them.
Avoid them. What are some other things that people do? You do, or other people that you know do with unpleasant feelings, other than avoid them?
You like dwell on it.
So get kind of stuck. We've talked about sticky thoughts and getting dwelling on them. Well, so what we're going to do with our next activity is let's just see if that works. If some of these strategies work. So I'm going to split you up kind of down the room here. So we'll have two different groups. And in your groups, what I'd like you to do is to come up with a typical situation or a category of situations that tends to cause you or people like you stress or distress. So I'll give you a minute to talk about that, and then when you've come up with that, I'll give you the next set of instructions. So if you can get together with your groups, and again, think about a situation that typically causes stress or distress.
How about school?
School, yeah, that's perfect.
Like
tests.
you guys already have your. And so what is the emotion at the root of that stressful experience? Like when you talk about school causing you stress, what's the unpleasant feeling that it really brings out for you?
Anxiety,
And so what,
Being negatively evaluated.
so fear, maybe fear being at the root of that? Okay, so what I would like you to do is write fear down on this paper. And then I'll give you these. Do you guys have your? Okay, so I'm gonna help them real quick, and then I'll give you an answer. Okay, what's your thing? Your stressor. Your situation. And what is the emotion at the root of that feels like? Why is that stressful to feel like? so you each have kind of,
You don't
the-
like, say like, oh, this doesn't work, but it demonstrates.
so you all have kind of the emotion that's at the root of that stressor on your piece of paper there. And then on these other note cards, what I'd like you to do is to write down the ways that people avoid or cover up feeling that feeling, whatever you've picked. And so this can be things people do, stories people tell themselves, and this can be things that you do or other people do that you've seen do. So write it on the piece of paper and you can just put them on top there of that emotion, and then when you've had a few minutes to do that, we'll move on to the next thing.
Drugs and alcohol. Yeah. Overworking. Maybe like putting other people down and gossiping.
Yeah, I know, I'm just like, my brain is still starting.
Avoiding responsibility.
I'm just distracting myself. Looking another way from it too. You just pretend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like
Cleaning, did you say cleaning is like baby?
Oh. I wish I was one of those stress cleaners. No. No.
Right, that's it too, like, it's
All right, so we might let this go on a little bit longer in the fall group program, but just for the sake of time, since you guys you had some ideas to, or some minute to generate some great ideas, we'll come back together as a group. And so what I'm hoping is that each group can share what the emotion was, the unpleasant emotion that they were thinking about, and what some of the strategies are. The things that people do, the stories that they tell themselves. So maybe if you guys want to start.
So we had fear, and it was about school, so like taking tests and that kind of thing. So to cover it up, we had pretending to be sick, running away, avoiding opportunities, putting other people down, rumination, procrastination, overworking, and drugs and alcohol.
What about you all? And if you have some of the same things, that's fine.
Some similar things. Our emotion was disappointing. So I guess our scenario is having someone disappointed in you, and the emotions to that would be feeling shame or guilt. And some of the actions would be like isolation, kind of avoidance, blaming other people, sleeping to kind of avoid watching TV or substance use.
Okay, so some overlap in terms of the strategies to deal with these two different unpleasant emotions. And so does the act of trying to cover up in this case, the fear and the guilt or the shame, does it work?
No, it makes it worse. It's like if you do drugs and alcohol, you're just gonna become more like entrenched in your workload.
So you say it could make it worse, and I see some nodding. Other people have similar thoughts, or maybe different thoughts about whether these strategies work to cover up these feelings?
Yeah. I agree with them making it worse, and also just burying it doesn't do anything to the emotion, so it's still there, it's just maybe harder to access or see. Like after a time, it might be hard to understand what's motivating the other behaviors that are happening.
And so you both kind of mentioned this idea that there might be costs, like it might be harder to access the emotion, or it gets even more entrenched. Are there other costs to these strategies that you mentioned? So like sleeping too much, blaming other people, doing drugs and alcohol. Are there other costs associated with those strategies? So I see lots of nodding. What are some of them, other than the ones that have come
Like if you're blaming other people, that'll affect your relationships.
Yeah, so other people don't like to be on the receiving end of that blame. Reagan, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, if you do too many drugs or alcohol, you could end up in the hospital.
So there can be real consequences, hospital, jail, or things like that. What about you guys, do you have thoughts about costs with these types of strategies?
Blame other people that may impact other relationships with those other people that you decide to turn your blame on to.
And isolation of yourself can potentially harm yourself, but also harm others as well, mental health wise.
Yeah, so isolating can have some real danger to social relationships and yourself. And so from this discussion, it's clear that these types of strategies of trying to cover up our unpleasant emotions has some problems. And so what we're going to talk about now is what can we do if we recognize that covering things up doesn't work all that well and it can have some negative costs. So if you want to move your way back to your mats, and I can collect those papers from you. Easy, yeah, easier said than done. All right, we're going to do one more demonstration before we move on to the next activity. So I'm going to hand you a little. Here, does anybody know what these are?
Finger pictures?
And so it sounds like maybe not a lot of people have used them. So you each have one. Yeah, and I see people going in the right direction if you put your fingers in. And what happens if you pull?
You can't get my hands out.
You can't get your hands out. What happens? Anybody know how to get your fingers out of something like that?
Push them back together.
Push them back together and then what?
And then use your hands, pull them out.
And that there's some gentleness that you need to kind of get them out. So the more you pull, the harder it is to get your fingers out. But you are, of course, I'm still a little stuck. I think I got it in there a little too far. But that pulling isn't the solution. So how could this be like emotions? How could something like this be like with our emotions? Any thoughts?
If you try really hard to get out of it, it just makes it worse.
Yeah, so if we're really fighting our emotions, we can get stuck in them. You know, we can't actually get out of them very easily. And so there are some other approaches with gentleness, perhaps, that we can use with our unpleasant emotions that can help us move through or let those emotions pass. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about now. Again, the idea that emotion or unpleasant feelings come up automatically, and we all have to deal with unpleasant feelings. And we've talked about the fact that they can be triggered by events that happen around us or also inside from our thoughts and from our feelings. And that these strategies that we have to avoid or cover up, we sometimes get really good at that. We can get really good at avoiding our emotions or trying not to deal with them. But you can miss out on a lot too when that's your strategy. So it came up in the discussion around like if you're blaming other people, there might be separation from your friends, if you're isolating yourself. But you also miss an opportunity to become stronger and more empowered, to be better able to deal with your unpleasant feelings, because we're all going to encounter them, so we're much more empowered if we have good strategies to deal with them. And so we can work with our feelings just like we can work with our thoughts, so like we did last week when we were in the reflections theme, talking about thoughts with those thoughts. So we can notice our unpleasant feelings and our pleasant ones with curiosity. And paying attention without judgment involves noticing emotions without giving them too much attention, so we can let them move on. And then we can practice kindness to ourselves by letting go of our judgments about what we're feeling. So not judging ourselves for being unkind to ourselves for feeling a particular way. Like being upset about not being good enough or feeling upset about something. Sometimes we really judge ourselves for feeling that way. And then particularly with feelings, we can try and locate that feeling in the body. Notice where it is, again, approaching with curiosity, and then letting it be or letting it go. And so we're not ignoring our unpleasant feelings, we're not covering them up, but we're using mindfulness, being mindful of our emotions and watch as they arise and as they pass away. And so we can notice our emotions, notice how they shift and how they change, thinking about them as ever-changing energies, and we can learn how to surf the waves of those ever-changing energies. And doing this is really a skill. And as a skill, it's one that we can practice and become better at it. So we're going to do some surfing the waves together today. And then it's something that you can practice when you're at home. But doing this practice really helps us to learn to recognize the thoughts and emotions that maybe work against us. And then practice kindness towards ourselves when we're feeling them and better manage them when they happen. So we're going to do a little bit of a longer practice right now. So I encourage you to get comfortable. You can lay down, you can sit on your pillow. It's a little bit warmer in here today, but get under the blanket if you would like. So get in a position where you'll be okay for a little bit of a long rest. Oh yeah, I grabbed one. All right, it seems like everybody's found a comfortable position. So let's just take a few full breaths in this position. Allow your mind to get as quiet as possible and let your attention come to rest on the breath. And when you notice that your mind has wandered, just bring your attention back to the breath. And as you do this exercise, try to notice what's happening inside you. Notice your thoughts, your feelings, and also any sensations that you experience in your body. We'll be sitting for a brief period in silence. quietly for this period of time, just notice if any feelings of discomfort arise. Perhaps there's some restlessness in the body and mind as you sit in silence. Can you pay attention to the restlessness? Where is it in your body? What does the experience of restlessness feel like for you? Is it loud and intense, or soft and gentle? Is it moving around or in one place? Perhaps there is some boredom that you notice. Pay attention to the boredom. Where is that feeling in your body? Is it loud and intense, or soft and gentle? Is it moving around or in one place? Does it change as you pay attention to it? Let the feelings of restlessness or boredom be like waves, coming and going. Don't try to block them or get rid of them. Don't try to